Hey guys, welcome to week 8. This is part 1, so I'll just throw that out at the beginning. Part 2, I don't do the video on. It's a pretty self-explanatory PowerPoint that you can peruse on your own. Be sure to do it though, it's got some good stuff in there. Okay, today, actually, I'm in the Dean's conference room for the College of Food, Ag, and Environmental Science, and really cool, actually her idea was, oh, you should film one downstairs, because I was telling her about this class just a few minutes ago, and she said with our banner and the idea that our college, we sustain life. That's kind of our overall mission. That's kind of the highest level of what we do. And when you think about that, wherever you may be right now in your career, in your academic path, in your studying, you're doing things to help people sustain life. And that's at all levels. So anyway, just something to think about when you think mission. We're going to talk strategy and mission and stuff in the next the second half of this semester. So so that's just a little preview. All right, formulating program evaluation plans, definitely part of sustaining life, definitely part of program planning as we're doing this good work, whether in extension or out with other organizations. So let's just jump right in. First of all, at the beginning of this semester, in your introductory videos, Amy Al-Hadi said in her video, and it just struck me when she said it, when evaluating programs, you know whether there was time invested in planning or not. And so this whole idea about program planning that we're talking about, the meta level for this semester, Amy just captured it. If you don't invest your time, then it's pretty obvious to your audience, your clientele. So if you just want to lose them right off the bat, don't invest the time. I thought that was a brilliant insight. 1,000 points. Of course, everything's made up, the points don't matter. Sorry, Who's Line fans, you'll catch that reference. Okay, so let's jump in. What are we talking about this week? This is an excerpted from Caffarel and Dufferin, Chapter 10. We want to talk about definitions of evaluation and the purposes of those evaluations. Systematic, formative, summative, and non-systematic, developmental, informal designs. A couple of types of evaluations, perspective, objectives-based, and then those interrelationships when we're working on doing program planning. Data collection, how do we find out what's up? And then the process of making those judgments. What do we do with this data when we've collected it? Quick background or context to this model. See, I'm modeling, setting the context, which are things that you guys will certainly be doing as you're designing programs. What's the difference between evaluation and research? They're very close and they overlap, but they're also very different things. When you think about program evaluation, we're talking about effectiveness and outcomes. We're trying to figure out, did it make an impact? Did we move people in their knowledge? Decision making, accountability. Versus in research, think back to your 8850 or whatever that intro statistics class are. You're looking for causation, not theta sub j's. You're looking for your generalizability, scientific method of doing it, imposing controls on your variables, random assignment of subjects, a lot more stuff, and for different purposes. So, but people have confused these over the years, so I just throw that out there as a flag. Program evaluation, so what is it? It's a process to really determine whether the design and delivery, whether those were effective. And did we get the proposed outcomes, the things that we wanted to achieve? Central purpose, decision making and accountability. How can I improve? How can I make things better? There's a quick note from the chapter that really gives you some of those outcomes and decisions that can help you make using evaluation data. Sorry, my brain is just like disconnecting. Do you need to change the design? Do you need to determine whether the program met the objectives? You can read through those. There's some really good stuff in there, and to make us pause and think a little bit. So 3 types of designs. We're just going to talk about these very quickly. Systematic, focusing on making judgments about the outcomes. Non-systematic, particularly developmental, which focuses on supporting development of more innovative programs sometimes, so a little different way of approaching. And then the informal or unplanned. So let's jump into systematic designs. First, you've got formative and summative, and you guys know this stuff. It's basic. Formative, while the program's in progress. We've got some examples of that. Summative, after it's completed. Just kind of starting with the basics, get you going here. The systematic program evaluation begins while it's being planned. And again, Amy's comment in the beginning, if we don't plan for that evaluation, if we haven't done the work, people are going to notice. Systematic evaluation do follow a sequential order, but some of those elements can overlap. And well, I'll mention that, I think, next slide. Here's some of the problems that show up. And again, I'll let you read this, but they're categorized before, during, and after to get you thinking about at all levels of your program design, your program plan. When you're working on this, you can't just, I'll figure out the evaluation at the end. Absolutely not. So pitfalls. This is the key. Problems can arise both before, during, and after data collection or any analysis. So be prepared to switch off, try some different alternatives. Programs can be messy. And so the effects of the programs, the outcomes can be messy. It's kind of hard to capture all of them sometimes. Scientific measurement may miss more subtle but equally relevant outcomes. So think about quantitative analysis versus qualitative. Hearing those stories or doing the depth, and you guys know this. If you haven't taken the qualitative class, take it. You'll absolutely benefit from it. They cost time and money, and collecting data when no action is planned will result, if no action is going to result from findings. So you need to do something, and that's a pitfall that we've seen happen, and I've probably been guilty of it myself. Unsystematic, think about developmental evaluation, a little different way of thinking it. Ongoing. So findings are regularly incorporated. So think about that formative process where you're updating or upgrading as you're doing the program. And a lot of times with longer term programs or innovative programs that we haven't quite figured all out yet, this can be really useful and useful in complex changing circumstances. Unstable infrastructures, natural disasters, because things are evolving. My brother's in the fire service. I think I gave some examples in the 8420 class of decision making and how those processes work when you're evaluating in that situation or in that ground where you're actually working at the time. I mentioned the complex, so the Knevin model, which is on the site, you don't have to worry about that. But it's just when we think about making decisions and trial and error experimentations and this developmental evaluation idea, there may not be real answers. There may be new context, and things may require that rapid response. And so Snowden, who put together this Knevin model, talks about problems that are simple, complicated, complex, or chaotic, and then the disorder that can happen in the middle. So depending on what you're doing, what you're working on, there are a lot of different ways to think about that evaluation piece, and you need to think about it in advance. That's your number one thing. 10.3 is a good example. I'll let you read through this again, but in general, the big picture, problems with no or limited answers. That can be a situation when this developmental evaluation approach can really be useful. If you're transferring programs to the new context, different application, again, or the rapid response. Informal or unplanned, spontaneous, new insights, here and now, what's going on. You can use these to assess, revise content delivery while you're in progress. I mentioned this before. Remember, these are opportunities that you should watch for to improve your programs. Lastly, though, you've got to be willing to observe and apply to change course. Not everybody is. And I've seen programs that desperately needed changing, perhaps you have. And whoever's leading them hasn't taken the time to say, okay, we're gonna shift gears. And I've got an example right here. Informal or unplanned evaluation. I won't tell you what city it was, but I was doing a historic district, so there was this great group of people. This 2 years ago, 2017, and we were working through this process. This was more of a strategic planning process, but it was moving toward a program plan for things that they could do to enhance their historic district, values of the homes, neighborhood, community building, that kind of thing. Pretty cool stuff. Right in the middle of it, this dude just like goes off the rail. And he's like, there's no point in any of this. I don't want to participate in any of this. I've got half this room is with me. And I was just like, oh, wow, time out. So I did a very quick, unplanned evaluation. And we stopped, we shifted gears. I deviated completely from my agenda and what I had planned, and said, let's reevaluate and reassess, and let's go at this a different way. It was very nerve-wracking. We were able to have a conversation, though, that brought people back together. They weren't all in agreement, but we brought them back together, and we were able to continue the conversation then at the next meeting, and we did continue the plan and came out with a successful way forward. But you talk about crazy, and some of you may have examples like that. Anyway, so evaluation processes. Think about how these should be integrated throughout the design, and I've mentioned this before. They can be useful before, during, after, and used in many components, including the participants, the context. These are the items that you want to think about. Setting goals and objectives, establishing learning objectives. Remember that from last week? Transfer of learning plans. Oh, wow, we've heard all this before. Yeah, because evaluation touches all of those. And so it needs to be in that context. So that's what I'm trying to preach today. Designs, a lot of different ways to think about evaluating programs. Common designs, participant perspective, objectives-based. You've got the post-test only, pre-test, post-test, things like that. Those surveys that you give people, I'm sure you've done those. And if you haven't, you will. And then there's more than one type, though, and they can be used within a single program. So anyway, I'll give you some more examples here in a minute. Program evaluation designs. So CAFREL and DAFRON throw out kind of the two, participant level and objectives based. So two different ways of kind of thinking about it. So for participant perspectives, at participant level, a lot of times you use those following a workshop or a conference. It's that quick survey that you send to everybody or you hand to them on a piece of paper. It helps you assess the participants' perceptions, the context, the instructor, the techniques, the facilities, the food. People always like to comment on that. But you may also use some open-ended items to help you get strengths and weaknesses. Most important thing learned, recommendations for future. That's where people miss. So that's a key thing to think about when you're doing your programs. Don't just do that, what do we call an extension, the evaluation of effective teaching tool. Add a couple of open-ended pieces to that. Can really help you improve your program long-term. Makes a big difference. Objective-based, again, wide range of context. Again, typically using a brief survey, but here you're trying to assess the participants' changes, actual or perceived, in their knowledge, beliefs, values, aspirations, skills. So think about CASA change. You guys know this most likely. If not, Google it up. It's good stuff. A lot of times Likert scale items, open-ended, can also be used though. So techniques, Exhibit 10.4 has got some ideas on how you can do that. One I really like is storytelling. I just picked this up a couple of years ago. It's probably old hat to some of you guys. But you have people draw a square, a triangle, and a circle, and you say, well, what's something that you got squared away today by participating in this program? What are 3 things you learned on the triangle? Just name 3 things and have them jot it down on a piece of paper. Or what's still circling in your mind? What are you still wondering about? And you can either collect those, that could be very beneficial, or you can have people talk about them and tell a little story about why something's still circling or why something became squared away as a result of your program. Then you're getting some really good stuff that tells you, yeah, that worked, or, ooh, I need to work on adjusting something. So methods of data analysis, quantitative, qualitative, multiple methods. Certainly observational data, numerical measures on the quantitative. You know this stuff, pretty statistical analysis. On qualitative, think about narratives, photos, the storytelling I just mentioned. You still need to do a systematic assessment though. You can't just, kind of get the words. You need to go through this. We just did this. I don't have time to tell you the story. Anyway, we just did a qualitative data analysis based on a lot of narrative input. And it was really fascinating to use in vivo. I think one of my colleagues did it. And to look at the results and then compare them to the raw data and to just kind of do that cursory review and then to look. Just fascinating stuff. So qualitative is not void of quantitative analysis. It's a different way of doing it, a different way of looking at it. Think about deductive, inductive. You guys know this stuff as well. Making generalizations. You have to be more careful with inductive, of course. We know that. Data analysis, multiple methods. Qualitative, quantitative. Our readings this week, the article uses both. So it's interesting. Check that out. It's got some good stuff in it. Focus on evaluation. Here's some examples. In the quantitative, pre-post can measure the knowledge, skills, beliefs, attitudes, feelings. Post-test scores, you compare the pre and the post. And then it gives you a scale or a measure that you can look at and see what's really happening. On the qualitative, you're observing the participants' actions. What are they saying? And then how do you interpret that? Did it support the change or not? Making judgments. We want our findings. This is good stuff. We want them to show what has changed, and then help us also. So 2 parts: plan to improve in the future. So what did they learn that was worthwhile? Were their goals and objectives met? So think back about writing the goals and objectives. That's why that was so important. Were the learners able to apply? Did they really get it? Do the managers, administrators, policymakers, did they think the training was worthwhile? Again, if you remember, who do we involve in doing our program plans earlier in the semester? Probably second week we talked about that. Critical stuff. Does the program address compelling community or social concerns, or the organization, whatever that organization may be? So these judgments, again, start really early in the process. So reiterating, hopefully, and you're seeing how this all ties together. That's my goal. On the supplemental readings this week, I'm not going to go over this much other than to say that Dara Bloom and Joanna Lidlekas, I can't even say it right now, are friends of mine down in North Carolina. And that's not why this article is in here, though. It gives a really good overview and again, uses the different types of program evaluation. I'll let you read through, read through the article. I just summarized it, the purpose of the study, what they were looking for in local foods in-service workshops, looking for those factors that can contribute to cross-program implementation. They're trying to see, did this work or not, and then sharing those lessons. Pretty good stuff. They went through the program development piece, needs assessment, evaluation, measuring satisfaction and findings. They went through that. Again, they used some Likert scales to see what their audiences were saying. Did they have changes in knowledge? And they did a retrospective pre-test design. We're not getting that technical in this class. You need to take an evaluation class, but it's really good stuff. And then finally, looking at potential practice changes and in their findings, and their aspirations, and what people, their participants did. So discussion board this week, that's online, but basically I want you to kind of think about this study. And did you see evidence of systematic, formative, summative, developmental, or informal evaluation? Participant perspectives and objectives-based design as they're designing it, when they talk about that, and effective use of quantitative, qualitative. So take a look, see what you think. You don't have to get into detail. So that's it, and we'll talk to you next time. Thanks. Happy evaluating.